With financial markets dropping lower and lower, and Donald Trump bent on creating a trade war with China, it seems the stock market is taking a plummet like we haven't seen in a while. I'm talking about all-time lows being dropped in a day, and investors are starting to panic. Now, this brings the question you've probably seen on Google, you've seen on YouTube. A lot of people are starting to talk about recession, and is the recession of 2020 coming? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you four ways, because I like you, Flight Crew. I really like you. I'm going to give you 4 ways on how you can predict the recession. And at the end, I'm going to tell you how you can go about your portfolio and getting ready for it. Hi, my name is Fly Stewie. You're listening to the Uneducated Investor Podcast, the podcast where we connect pop culture to business. Feel free to leave a like, of course, support the channel. Your likes go a far way. It helps the YouTube algorithm. So hit that like button and subscribe for more weekly content. Now, recessions are pretty ugly because they destroy your whole portfolio of investments. Essentially, when a recession happens, you lose around 30% to 50% of your portfolio worth. So if you had a portfolio of 10,000, that'd be like 7,000, 100,000, that'd be 70,000. And to see your hard-earned money go down the drain just like that in a short period of time is a very painful experience. Of course, timing the market's pretty much impossible, but if you were able to predict the market and avoid the 2008 recession or avoid the Great Recession of 2000s, you would be a very wealthy man. That's why a lot of people make their wealth during recessions. So in this video, I'm gonna help predict when the next recession is and give you some tools that people in the past have used to predict recessions and take advantage of that for their portfolios. The first way people use to predict in recessions, of course, is the inverted bond yield curve. Now, the bond yield curve that everyone's referring to is a very simple chart that has on it essentially long-term bonds and short-term bonds. And normally when it comes to this chart that people are viewing, they expect the long-term bonds to outperform the short-term bonds when it comes to how much of a return you get. This is because one of the basic laws of finance is $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. For instance, if your brother came to you and asked you if he could borrow $100, if he said he would give it back to you tomorrow, you would probably be more inclined to let him borrow that $100. However, if he said he'd give it back to you 30 years from now, there's gonna have to be a big reward or a big reason why you let him borrow $100 for 30 years. That is because your money today is more valuable than your money in 30 years. Implicitly, this also brings in another sort of crux into the whole long-term bond should be more valuable than short-term bonds. And that is the risk. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen in 30 years. You could get hit by a car in 30 years. So holding an investment for a longer time, you expect to get, of course, a bigger return. So when we see a situation where short-term bonds are outperforming long-term bonds, it starts to give us a little taste of what people are thinking about the economy. Now, in the past, after one of the yield curve inverts and the long-term bonds start being worth less than the short-term bonds, we have seen recessions follow around 1.5 years to 2 years after. So a lot of people are seeing that the yield curve inverting now could indicate that a recession is upon us or will be soon enough. Number 2 way to predict a recession, and this one I think is kind of cool. Now, I remember I think it was a grade 10 or grade 11 business class. My teacher mentioned to me, I think this was like 2008, 2009, so just after the recession or just at the bottom of the recession, my teacher mentioned to me then that one of the best predictors of the recession or upcoming recession was something that a lot of people didn't suspect. It was that if you saw the continued use of the word recession in the newspapers and how people were talking about it in more news stories and more news stories and more news stories, quickly after that quick ramp up of talking about the recession, a recession in the economy actually followed. What does that mean? That means that people made more articles and more articles saying, is a recession coming? Is a recession coming? And eventually, I guess people read those articles or something. But simply just talking about the recession and talking about the upcoming recession is a great indicator of the recession coming up. So not a lot of people use the newspapers all nowadays. So I thought it'd be pretty cool if we use another way to see how many people are talking about the recession nowadays. So one way we can do this, guys, is using a cool tool called Google Trends. Google Trends lets you type in a keyword into Google Trends, and then from all the way from 2004 to present, as you can see from my page here, if you're on YouTube or you're on podcast, just follow along. All the way from 2004 to present, it shows you the popularity of the word recession. So one of the cool things here is you'll see it's pretty flat. Not a lot of people talking about it. And the interest over time, this is what this graph shows, interest over time, shows that a value of 100, which shows the point in time where people were most interested in this word recession, was the year and the month of January 2008. Now, what's significant about January 2008? What's significant about it is if we look at an actual, a chart of, SPY, it's just an ETF that essentially mirrors a stock market. If we look at this ETF and its stock chart here, when we go to January 2008, we can see that it had a lot of its value during this time. Pretty cool, right? Like you can see it was at a value of, 146 is when it opened that day in January 2008. And so 146 dropped to, in the month of October, dropped to 115, and then a low of 83 in that month. So it dropped all the way down to 83 in October, and then if you go down even more to February, at the very bottom, it dropped all the way to 73. But around January, it's, a little dip happened, but you can see that, it still kept its value pretty good at a high of 146 that month and a low of 126. And if you go up even higher at October 2017, you can see that I was at 152. So it only dropped from 152 to around 146. Now let's go back to that keyword page on Google Trends that shows the interest in the word recession. So this is just shows how many people typed in Google the word recession and to see how many people were interested in it over time. So this chart shows a huge spike for January 2008, which, remember, was when we looked at the SPY chart, the big drop was in October. So if you were looking at this Google Trends chart in January 2008, you would see that a lot of people are talking about recession, and this would have been a good predictor of when the recession happened. So let's just look at it again. You see January 2008 here. A lot of people are talking about it. Then we go to January 2008 on this chart here. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but the recession happens 10 months later. So this was a great predictor if you use that at this time. And then you go see what October shows here. In October, people are talking about recession again, but it's too late. The recession happened and then the market bottomed out. Now let's see what's going on in recent times, because this is 2008 we're looking at. But when we go to see, today in August, it is showing that people are really interested in the word recession in August. So this would suggest that, hey, maybe within the next 10 months, there is going to be another recession, because the interest in the word recession is starting to peak again. And the last chart showed us that within 10 months, there was another recession. So it could be a low-key great indicator that the recession is coming, because more people are thinking it's a recession. And this plays into, of course, behavioral economics or behavioral investors or behavioral people, where, the more people that talk about recession, the more people that really bring it up, it really gets in their mind that recession is coming. And then people, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy where people think there is a recession coming. So therefore, people are actually going to start investing less and spending less and saving their money, because they think a recession is coming. The less spending and consuming in an economy means that there's less overall economic growth, which hence causes a recession. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it goes into the kind of the the psychology of the stock market. There's a big psychological, I can't speak. I can't talk. There's a big psychological aspect of the market where if you think a recession is going to happen, then it probably is. Now, number 3 reason or sign or predictor of a recession, of course, is job losses. This is the thing that really causes the recession, is, when people lose their job and really can't spend in the economy. So realistically, this one is very simple. It's more of an observer thing. And the more you start to observe people losing their jobs around you or layoffs happening in companies, the more you should be thinking that maybe it's time to start saving my money and changing up my investing strategy. Now, one thing, this is just anecdotal. This is, has nothing to really do with anything. This isn't really a predictor, but I think a kind of interesting thing is I was watching one of my favorite YouTubers, the Tech Lead, and I saw that he lost his job at Facebook. Now, this is a job that pays over $500,000, super successful guy. And he lost his job over basically a non-reason. They said because he had a YouTube channel, but realistically, I don't think that's it. When I see these weird type of job firings and weird reasons to lay people off and stuff like that, it again plays into my paranoia and makes me think that a recession is coming. So look in your town, especially if you live in the States, look at, newspapers, look at people you follow, look at economic reports, and to see those job numbers and to see those people getting laid off in your communities is definitely a great indicator that recession is coming, because companies lay off, of course, when economic times are bad, and when economic times are booming, we expect companies to expand and hire more people. So this is a great indicator, and if people don't have money and they can't spend in your economy, it might be one of those things that causes a recession. And the 4th indicator, and this is probably the simplest one, is of course time. Time over everything. This is one of the best indicators that a recession is coming, because recessions happen typically from every 7 to 10 years. That is when recessions happen. So if we're essentially due for a recession, then one of the great things that we can do is start to prepare our portfolios for that recession. 10 years, it's been 2019? It's been 10, 11 years since 2007, 2008, 2009. So we're practically due and ripe for a recession. We've been pumping our economy full of money from the Fed for how long now? This means that recession is just so on the cusp of happening. So now is definitely not a time to be too aggressive, and it's time to thinking on how we can actually take advantage of a recession. Now, if you want to know how to best prepare yourself for a recession, I've actually made a YouTube video on exactly how you can do that. I will link that here, somewhere around here. I think I'm pointing to it, I don't know. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, of course, that really helps so much, and comment if you think a recession is coming, or if you think it's going to be way later. Let me know. And always remember that this is just me talking about it. Recession, I don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the future. Me personally, I'm preparing for a recession. I'm going to slowly start selling off different bits of my stocks and start making a more defensive portfolio. I'm going to start deleveraging myself, getting rid of any, debts that I have, get rid of any sort of risky investments that I have, and have a more safe position. Of course, I talk about this in my other YouTube video. And if you like this video, we do videos 3 times a week. So make sure to subscribe and we can get better investing together. And as always, the best, most brightest investors are the uneducated ones. Why is that? That's because the uneducated investor, they never stop learning. See you, flight crew, and we have to take off.